if you're going to go out there, you really want to take the approach, you know, where do I not want to make mistakes? Right. Because if you're going to go out there and try it yourself, you don't, there's not a lot of time, right? So you want to, understand that you have a lot of value, right? So, I would recommend having a mentor that someone could guide you and then really just kind of avoid mistakes. But if you're going to dive in, don't be afraid, to dive in head first. I mean, you kind of thought how I dived in, but, follow someone that's done it before. Don't try to reinvent the wheel and just get out there and try it, whether it's a residential deal or commercial, provided it meets your criteria, whether it's your investment criteria or the investment criteria, the group that you're putting together and putting their money in. Just keep it real simple. And that's the approach I would take.
Welcome to the Real Estate Jam Session. Man, I got a great guest for you today, Ken Van Liew. Ken has been a featured guest on NBC, CBS, Fox, and a ton of other business channels. And he comes on today to give us really the wealth building formula for real estate. So make sure you check out the video. Go to the channel above, give us a like, and while you're there, if you haven't done so yet, make sure you subscribe. And if you're new to the channel, my name is Joe Killinger. I've been a real estate entrepreneur for over 20 years, and I use this platform to bring on guests, and we talk about what has worked well for us and what we have failed at. So you can really learn a lot. So again, make sure you check out the video, give us a like, and subscribe while you're there. Thank you. Ken, I think there's something we need to clear right away. I noticed that you are called the Godfather of real estate. How did you get that title?
you know, it's kind of interesting. I was in the concrete business and
oh Lord,
I had to deal with some tough guys. But I always respected, I guess you could say, the Cosa Nostra, and because it was it meant our work. It's not really, it's a negative connotation, but one day joking around, people were saying, oh, you were in the concrete business. I said, yeah, now I'm the Godfather of real estate. But just playing off that, I've created an enterprise, and I joke, kind of once you get in, you don't get out. Because I believe in holding people accountable, for keeping their word. And if their word is with themselves, most time people in life don't honor their word with themselves, and then they end up shooting all over themselves. I say, I should have did this and I should have did that. And, so that's where it really came from. It was just a coined term, king of skyscrapers, the Godfather of real estate, just having some fun around it.
Yeah, I was a little concerned being that you're back east, and I'm like, okay, this could get interesting. But I do think, Ken, you bring a lot of value to our viewers. And, with your experience over all these years and everything you've done, I've got a lot of people here really trying to learn how to get started in real estate. And how did you find your path? What got you started?
Yeah, I had an interesting path, and it took me a while to kind of bring it down to figure out how it applies to the beginner that wants to become, get involved in real estate investing. And I started my career, trying to be a civil engineer, and it wasn't working that well. So I created the 6-year plan in college. I eventually received a civil engineering degree, and, I wasn't really great at it, but I won an award in civil engineering when I graduated. It was for a site development that I did in 1985, and it planted a seed. But I went on to be a civil engineer, and I didn't like sitting at a board engineering. So I went into construction, and as a young man, I built a 32 unit up in Poughkeepsie, New York, which led to building 2 skyscrapers for the Left Rack organization. And the next thing you know, I was a superintendent building skyscrapers in New York City, working myself up the corporate ladder with one of the largest construction management companies in the world. But I really didn't know anything about the real estate end of it. And, that's where I kind of started. I came in from the building side, and my first project was, unusual. It was a $17 million assisted living, 113 beds, where, what made me do that was that I knew that I could pay myself a 5% development fee, 10% general conditions, and a 5% CM fee. So that's kind of how I went into real estate.
How did you get somebody, no experience, right? How did you get somebody to give you that kind of debt to do that?
Yeah, great question. I
That would
figured
be
out
hard.
that, yeah, I figured out that in New Jersey, if you had a certificate of need, that you could finance building assisted livings two different ways. There was the Housing Finance Mortgage Authority and the New Jersey Economic Development Agency. And I went down that route, and the New Jersey Economic Development Agency, had the whole prevailing wage thing, but they were literally going to give me all the money I needed, which was about 90%, and then another few $1 million to make sure that I stabilized the facility. And all I had to do was raise about 10%. So I went on a quest, and better than I, do a couple tranches. We raised, I think it was 400 in the first, to kind of get me,
Yeah.
into the game, and then another 400 to get through the planning board, and then, another 600 to get the construction documents and close a loan. And we were building an assisted living, and 13 months later, we cut the ribbon.
So how many nights did you actually sleep a full night? I mean, this is your first project this size. You had to be so anxiety ridden. I mean, I typically tell people, start small, build your way up, but you kind of throw that out the window, right? You're like, nope, let's just go for the home run.
You're the first one that caught on to that, because there were nights I would go walk that project at 3 o'clock in the morning going like, how am I ever going to get this thing done? What am I doing?
Yeah.
I remember one time we had poured a leveling, and it was so moist that the mold was starting to grow up the walls. And I was like an emergency thing. One night I went in the middle of the night, opening windows, turning on fans. I brought in a whole labor force and realized anytime you do that, you have to put a slip sheet around the wall so the moisture doesn't go into the sheetrock,
Right.
But I lived and learned, and you said it right. There was a time I think, I already had like that automatic alarm after 5 hours, but, during that process, I was probably sleeping 4 hours a night, just,
Yeah.
very anxious. But, I guess, when it got to the point of construction and the financing was done, I was kind of in my comfort zone. Not, I was in my comfort zone, and that's something I kind of had to get to the finish line. But I kind of figured, I figured out all the real estate thereafter. Like, okay, you just
Mhm.
did a syndication. You just closed a real estate deal. You had, this huge closing at this massive law office, and I was building on paper the whole time, because I knew that I
Right.
had to finish as quick as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, how did you
Anybody
find the
can.
well, I guess being a civil engineer, you had construction contractors already that you knew.
Great question, because, people ask, how did you find your first deal? Like, and today, I was laughing when we started, because not many people remember the classified ads.
Oh,
We used to,
yeah.
we used to get the classified ad
Yeah.
section, and go find deals. And, when I put this thing together, I didn't have the credibility. I knew how to build, but I literally went and solicited the project. And when the bids came in, like, I think the lowest bid was 9.1, and I only had 8.7 to build it. That was an opportunity where I was like, hey, I think I can do this, and I have some ideas. I ended up building it for 8.6, saving the partnership $500,000. And that's where I really was able to kind of make a little claim to fame, because
Yeah.
I was like the white knight that kind of showed up, not thinking that I would even have an opportunity. And, even at that time, I remember I couldn't get the performance bond, because, the EDA just doesn't give you $17 million without, something to lean on, so I made a deal with a contractor to literally put the bond up. I split part of the CM fee, but I was able to put a little project management team and bring all that money into my organization, which paid for my accountant. I was kind of I was the PM, for a short period. Then I turned it over, it paid for a super. It enabled me to build other aspects of my business. And that was, I guess, the unique, heroic, identity, I guess you want to call, of what I pulled off, because I was able to, give myself a job almost, right? Because,
Right.
everybody has a job and they want to get into real estate investing and break free. And it was almost like a little bridge in order to make the transition, like, pay yourself a little fee as you're
Yep.
doing it, and then get enough ownership where you can kind of break out and get on your own. But, that's how it all happened, in
See,
reverse.
were you married at the time?
Yeah. I was,
You must have drove her insane.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
probably 10 years in. I had just had twins, so I
Oh,
wasn't
good Lord.
sleeping that much anyway.
Yeah, true.
And I started late. I was 31 years old when this journey started, and I
Right.
did the assisted living, and I probably didn't get enough confidence until about 27, 28. And then it took like another few years to kind of position myself to tell my
Right.
wife, like, hey, I'm going to quit my job. And she's like, "Yeah, what?"
And
you
she
know,
stuck with you through all this. That's,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, 39 years now. So,
oh my God. Well,
my twins are going to be
congratulations.
30 this year. So, yeah,
Amazing.
God bless them.
Now, can do you think a new person wanting to get into real estate investing at your level, could they go do what you did? Could they start the way you did?
They absolutely can,
They
and
can.
there was, and I'll tell you why. It's obviously mindset, but the paragraph that changed my entire life um, was was I had just passed my PE test and I had taken it 4 times. And I went to get my transcript at
Right.
NJIT, and I walked into a library. I pulled this book off the shelf. It said syndication and joint venture. I wasn't really sure what syndication meant in 1996. And it said anybody can be a syndicator. It's a
Right.
connector. It could be a builder, it could be a clerk, it
Mhm.
could be an accountant, it could be a lawyer, it could be anybody. And I was like, wow, I could connect people and I like to talk. And, if you see a vision of, how someone can manage a piece of real estate and you can connect people and you could ask, hey, if you give me this money, I'm going to give you a return. And this is how the process is going to be. And you could actually articulate it, and build confidence and explain yourself. There isn't anything you can't do,
Yeah.
and the formula that I wrote was kind of how I started like that, figuring it out. And then I reverse engineered it into, if you want to get started, you look at the financial freedom protocol,
Yep.
protocol that I did and how it led to the modern wealth building formula, and how, real estate development made simple was developed, and how these programs were developed in reverse after I kind of figured out what I was
Mhm.
doing. And I call it top down thinking,
Yep.
and how you could either start from the top and ascend, you could jump, you can land on the ascension path in the middle if you want, and kind of figure out, hey, what do I want to do? It's like an ice cream store. Let me try a little residential, a little
Sure.
commercial. Or you can just drop it on the top and be totally confused and frustrated, and have,
Yeah.
much more, larger breakthroughs and learning experiences like you could never imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. I think reverse engineering it is a great way to get started. Look where you want to be and figure out how you're going to get there. And I just firm believer. Now, do you do any? Your focus now is what you're doing skyscrapers. Are you doing any multifamily?
So I actually stepped that. It's been a few years since
Okay.
skyscrapers. When COVID hit in New York City, it was so hard
Yeah.
to get permits. I had a $40 million penthouse deal going, some buildings coming out of the ground. So I'm doing skyscrapers horizontally, is what I say. We
Okay.
have over 100 acres that we're developing. I have several projects in New Jersey. We just had a CVS pharmacy approved. We're doing affordable housing and some commercial office in Chester, New Jersey. We have some self storage in Bedminster. We have some residential in Bridgewater. We have 45 acres in North Carolina where we're doing hotels, self storage, flex office, townhomes, residential flats. We have some stuff in Texas, doing stuff in Lakeland, Florida. So
You're
we've
all over.
really started to combine this little educational platform, which is going to take off this year. I was just contacted by Dennis Quaid, Viewpoint, and we're going to create a documentary that's going to go to 60 million households, called Real Estate Today: Keys to Investing. So, we're
Oh,
real
nice.
excited about what we're doing, and then we're creating a global fund that
Okay.
will support the whole education and the real estate platform that we're building nationwide. So that's the exciting stuff going on in my life.
Well, that's all good news because I just think there's a lot of there's a lot of podcast, there's a lot of information out there, right? So you have a lot to bring. You have a lot. I mean, obviously, you've taken a different path to get started, but you have a lot of wherewithal that you can bring to somebody really wanting to get into the industry. You
Yeah.
know, um, Building wealth in real estate. If
Yeah.
I'm a new investor, I'd like to hear. You know, how would you get started if you were going to start today? What would
Yeah.
you do to really
Yeah.
get started?
Yeah. So, and I said it before, so real estate, a lot of times people sit in I would say, a little paralysis analysis and think about, how do I get started? Do I have to get into a certain market? Do I have to
Yeah.
try a certain type of real estate? And, just take a deep breath and say, real estate is a calculated risk. It's an investment. It could be any type of product. It could be in any kind of market. The beauty of real estate is you have various types, you have various markets. So it's kind of a natural diversification. And you really just have to decide, hey, do I want to be passive? Do I want to be active? If you're a passive investor, there's, obviously real estate, not obviously, I shouldn't say that, but there's real estate investment trusts that you can invest in the stock market. It's hands off. It's treated like a stock. It's very liquid. You can put your money out. If that's something you want, if you're the kind of passive investor that you want to drive by your property once in a while and be able to look at it, there's, from what I found, a lot of local real estate investors that, once you vet them out and find that they're operating under integrity, there's a lot of times private investors, that's what we had done for many, many years. We are moving towards more of a syndicated format. So once you determine, whether you're passive or active, the passive, you have those options I just mentioned. And then
Right.
the active real estate, residential deal or commercial, provided it meets your criteria, whether it's your investment criteria or the investment criteria, the group that you're putting together and putting their money in, just keep it real simple. And that's the approach I would take.
And treat it like a business. I think a
Yeah.
lot of us, we get into real estate and they go, this is going to be a passive investment, right? I'm just going to do this. And sorry, I'm getting a little hot. Uh, so I think it's very key that we really take a look at how much time do we really have to put into this, because
Yeah.
I see now, I'm in Los Angeles, so I see a lot of investors that are looking out of state. They're looking for multifamily and
Yep.
Texas, Florida, and across the Midwest. And you ask them first thing, how are you going to manage that? So they sold 5 units here, they're going to buy 100 units back east somewhere. How
Yep.
are you going to manage that?
Yep.
And I tell them horror stories about property management and multifamily. It's
Yep.
some of the properties that we bought over the years is because I had a out-of-state owner that
Yep.
didn't know what was really going on with their property. Now, did you guys self-manage?
Yeah. So good question. I didn't answer that side. So, I've always had that challenge. And, I was saying it last week, you need several management companies. If you're in an area and you have a couple hundred units, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, with any management
Yeah.
company. So, in a lot of cases, I used to self-manage. I don't anymore.
Right.
And, I got out of a lot of the multifamily, and a lot of the multifamily that I did was in a condo structure. So we sold
Gotcha.
off a lot. Now, I'm looking at it a little bit different and taking a different strategy. I don't want to talk cliches, but my blue ocean strategy is we're going to go into areas and become, entitlement specialists, more working for projects. We can buy land, create highest and best use investments that could, get the 200%, 300% return on the investment. And through creating the relationships on that approach, we will have multifamily opportunity instead of going into this, piranha infested red ocean with everybody and their brother going after multifamily. It's
Yep.
just doesn't something that I'm not interested in. I mean, I'll build my own multifamily. Like I have 100 flats that I'm going to build in Lewisburg, and right now with, like you said it before, the numbers you're paying, you can build almost as cheap,
Yeah. Yeah, it's something.
Or-
Yeah, the management is something that people are really need to think about, because the last property we bought in Dallas, Texas, 73 unit. I think it's been a while ago, so I think there was 4 employees in the place.
Yeah.
And they had the on-site man. This has been years ago, so these numbers, they were paying $60,000 a year to the on-site manager. It turns out she was getting 30. They were pocketing the rest. They had a free unit going to a lead maintenance guy that was actually working the property next door, not that particular property, and paying another lead maintenance guy and the groundskeeper. And the property owner was out of town and didn't come in and check it. I mean, it ended up breaking the guy. We bought the property back from the bank. And, the staff came in and they go, well, are we going to be able to stay on? And I just showed them, I said, not at these salaries. They go, well, we don't get that. That's not what we earn. I'm like, okay. Then we talked to them, but you've really got to stay on top of it. You got to treat it like it's a business, and you've done that very thing.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
Where
no
are you seeing the
question.
hottest spot in the market? You said about storage. You really like that market?
Well, I mean,
I
I
don't
think
know
it,
it, so yeah,
yeah, I mean, I like it because they're, if you stabilize the storages, that like you said, the numbers are silly, and
yeah,
the storage companies, come in and, if you can either deliver a pad or they like where you could build to suit. And then if you stabilize it, you could lock in literally a cap rate early on. And of course you have some hurdles to meet, but you build to their specifications. And then, once you deliver to stabilized, once you ring the bell with the stabilized facility, it cashes out, silly.
yeah,
But it in our instances, a lot of times, we will go in and have a multi-use, and we have somebody that says, "Hey, I'll give you, $3 million for that 100,000 square foot pad," and then that helps us, close or utilize the money towards, maybe a residential or giving another portion of the project to us with little or no money.
yeah. That really, I've got to look into public storage because I think the lease terms are they're month to month.
Yes.
Is that what they are? So they're a good inflation fighter, right?
Yeah.
I think that'd be a great way to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Um, this has been very powerful for our
Mm.
viewers. I appreciate you taking the time. Do you have one tip that you give them get them to get started in real estate investing? Your number one tip. What do you got? I'll throw you under the bus here a bit.
Yeah, I guess, I have these secrets that, there was 11 of them. I mean, if it's okay, I can give them a link to check out. But I
Yeah,
guess it's the 11millionairesecrets.com. And, it's really how, I started because it was a little bit different than everybody else. And, on my first project, I made over $1 million. But, as far as, getting started, if I was just to say one tip,
mhm,
just, however you figure it out, believe in yourself, because if
yeah,
you're sitting there right now and saying, I really want to have a real estate portfolio that gives me a passive income so I don't have to go to work every day, believe that you can do that.
yeah,
And don't be afraid to ask people for help. It's
yeah,
really that simple. When I went into that development that I told you about, I surrounded myself with people that knew more than me, and I asked for help. And that's what I would suggest, and just get started.
yeah. Start to take the steps, but you're
Mm.
so spot on with getting the right team put together.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask for help. All right,
Yeah.
now I see that book in the back corner there. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the book you put out?
Yeah, the modern wealth building formula, how
Yeah,
to master real estate investing. You can get it for free on my website, kenvanloo.com. It shows you how I started. It talks about the 9 ways to earn fees. If you choose to start at the top and work yourself down, it talks about, my pre-game approach and my find fund to facilitate system that I put together after doing it for many years, that I was
yeah,
finally able to articulate. It took me a year to write, but I'm proud of it. And it
very
was
good.
really just my way of being able to pay it forward. And, it did well with Amazon, hit 29 categories, #1. Jack Canfield put his
Awesome.
name on it, and my mentor Dolph DeRue wrote the forward. So I'm blessed with that, and I hope you
Very
get a
cool.
chance to take a look at it.
Well, we'll put a link to it in the bottom of this video so they can
Awesome.
find it and find you. I'll put your contact information. Ken, thank
Awesome.
you very much for coming on the show today. I just
Yeah.
think your experience and our viewers needed to hear it. Very powerful. So thank you very much.
And thank you for your flexibility, Ty. I appreciate you,
Oh
Joe.
yeah, yeah. And for those of you watching, make sure you check out the video, give us a like, and if you haven't done so yet, make sure you subscribe. And we'll see you again soon.
Yes.